Hey guys, welcome back to more Reddit legal advice stories. What would you do if you came back to your property and an awful homeowner association built member houses on your land without permission? That's exactly what happened to OP. Let's dive right into the story. So I'm absolutely livid right now. I need some serious legal advice because I think I'm about to lose my mind over the situation. So I own a 15-acre property that I inherited from my grandpa about 5 years ago. It's in a semi-rural area outside the city limits, and when I inherited it, there was just the main house where my grandpa lived and a lot of open land. The property has been in my family for over 60 years, and there's never been any HOA involvement whatsoever. In fact, my property predates the HOA by decades. About 2 years ago, I got a fantastic job opportunity overseas that required me to relocate for an extended period. I am in engineering, and the company needed someone to oversee a major infrastructure project. The assignment was supposed to last 18 months, but due to various complications and extensions, I ended up being gone for almost 2.5 years. Obviously, I was not physically present to monitor everything happening on the land, but here's where it gets absolutely insane. So I returned home 3 weeks ago, and I discovered that there are now 4 houses built on my property. 4 entire houses, not small structures, but full-size single-family homes with driveways, landscaping, and mailboxes. These are not tiny houses or temporary structures. We are talking about 2,000 plus square foot homes that clearly cost hundreds of thousands of dollars each to build. I immediately started investigating what the hell happened, and it turns out the local HOA decided to expand their community onto my land. The HOA president, who we will call Mr. HOA for privacy, apparently convinced several families that they were purchasing legitimate lots within the HOA community. These families paid substantial amounts of money, I'm talking $150,000 plus per lot, and then spent additional hundreds of thousands of dollars building their dream homes. The HOA has been collecting monthly dues from these homeowners for the past 18 months, and they've been maintaining the roads and common areas that were built on my property using funds from the entire HOA community. They even installed streetlights and a small playground area near the houses. When I confronted Mr. HOA about this, his response was absolutely unbelievable. He told me that since I was absent and clearly not using the land, the HOA had the right to develop it for the betterment of the community. He claimed that there was some old easement or right-of-way that gave them permission, but when I asked to see the documentation, he got evasive and said his lawyer was reviewing the paperwork. The 4 families living in these houses are just as shocked as I am. They had no idea they were building on someone else's property, and they thought they were buying legitimate lots from the HOA and that all the proper permits and surveys had been completed. These people have invested their life savings into homes that are apparently built on land they don't actually own. And yes, I've already contacted my own lawyer, but he's still reviewing the situation and gathering documents. My property deed is crystal clear. I own all 15 acres and there are no easements or rights-of-way that would give the HOA any claim to my land. The original survey from when my grandpa purchased the property clearly shows the boundaries and I had it resurveyed. The really infuriating part is that Mr. HOA is now claiming that since the houses are already built and families are living in them, I should just be reasonable and sell him the land for the same amount the HOA originally charged the homeowners. And by the way, guys, I think the reasonable thing to do here would be to kick the butt of that entitled HOA guy. He's acting like he's doing me a favor by offering to buy my own property for me. He said something like, "Look, everyone's already settled in and it would be cruel to displace these families. Just sell us the land and everyone wins." I told him absolutely not, and that is when his attitude completely changed. He started making threats about how the HOA has significant legal resources and how they will fight this in court for years if necessary. He also implied that I might be responsible for compensating the homeowners for their losses since I allowed this to happen by being absent for so long. The homeowners themselves are understandably panicking. One of them, a young couple with a newborn baby, came to my door crying and begging me not to make them move. They showed me all their documentation from the HOA, including official-looking contracts, building permits, and even a survey that somehow shows their lot as being a part of the HOA community. I have no idea honestly how the HOA managed to get permits for construction on land they don't own, but apparently they did. So my questions are, can an HOA legally sell land they don't own and issue building permits for construction on someone else's property? Number 2, am I legally obligated to honor the sales that the HOA made to these homeowners, even though I never consented to sell my land? Also, what are my options for getting these houses removed from my property? Can I force them to be torn down? Can the HOA be held criminally liable for fraud since they took money from these families for land they had no rights to sell? Am I potentially liable for any damages to the homeowners who were deceived by the HOA? Also, what's the best way to handle the situation to protect myself legally, while also being fair to the innocent homeowners who got scammed? To be honest with you guys, the whole situation is giving me nightmares. I feel terrible for the families who got scammed, but I'm also furious that someone had the audacity to build houses on my property without my permission. Mr. HOA is acting like a complete sociopath about the whole thing, and I'm worried he's gonna drag this out in court, hoping I will eventually give up and sell him the land cheap just to end the headache. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. And yeah guys, let me know in the comments what you would do in this awful situation. Also, I respect OP's empathy for the families that built the houses there, or rather bought the land from the HOA. Either way, I'm really curious what you would have done here and what you think about the situation. While you're at it, please don't forget to like the video, since that would help me tremendously. The first comment said, "This is an absolutely insane situation, but you are actually in a very strong legal position." Let me address your questions. Number 1, no, an HOA cannot legally sell land they don't own or issue permits for someone else's property. What they did is textbook fraud. You have zero obligation to honor fraudulent sales, and the homeowners were victims of the HOA scam, not legitimate purchasers. You can absolutely demand removal of all structures from your property. As the legal owner, you have the right to exclusive use of your land, so this is almost certainly criminal fraud on multiple levels, and the HOA president could face serious federal charges for mail fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy. Comment number 2, I've seen similar cases. The HOA president is hoping you will cave under pressure, but you hold all the cards here. Some additional thoughts: check if your property management company has any liability here. They should have noticed construction activity during the monthly visits, the permits issued for your property were obtained fraudulently, and contact your local building department immediately. Consider hiring a forensic accountant to trace where all the money went. Also, the HOA president may have personally profited from this scheme. File complaints with your state's real estate commission and Attorney General Office. Update to the story. But before we read this, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to not miss any of my daily videos. So first off, thank you to everyone who gave me advice. Your guidance literally saved me hundreds of thousands of dollars and possibly years of legal headaches. I took your advice and had my existing survey updated with the current structures to document exactly where the houses were built relative to my property lines. The updated survey confirmed exactly what I already knew. All 4 houses were built entirely on my land, with the closest one being about 200 feet inside my property line. I also hired a lawyer who specializes in real estate fraud, and he was absolutely salivating when I explained the situation to him. But here's where the story gets really good. Remember how Mr. HOA kept insisting there was some old easement or right-of-way that gave them permission to build on my land? Well, my lawyer demanded to see this supposed documentation, and after weeks of stalling, Mr. HOA finally produced some papers. The documents were completely fabricated, not just incorrect, they were all completely made up. My lawyer had a forensic document examiner look at them, and they determined that the historical easement had been created using modern computer software and artificially aged to look old. Clearly, we're talking about federal document fraud here. Meanwhile, I followed the advice about contacting law enforcement. The local police initially seemed hesitant to get involved, calling it a civil matter, but everything changed when I mentioned the fraudulent documents and fake permits. Suddenly, this became a criminal investigation. The investigation also revealed this was not Mr. HOA's first rodeo. It turns out he had been running variations of this scam for years, targeting properties with absentee owners. He would identify land that appeared unused, forge documents to create fake legal claims, and then sell development rights to unsuspecting buyers. The 4 houses on my property were just his latest and most ambitious project. Here's the really crazy part though, the building permits that somehow got approved for my property. The city building inspector who signed off on them was Mr. HOA's brother-in-law. They had been running a corruption scheme where Mr. HOA would pay him to approve permits for questionable projects, and they would split the profits from the fraudulent land sales. The accountant my lawyer hired discovered that Mr. HOA had collected over $800,000 from the 4 homeowners for the lots on my property, plus another $150K in HOA dues and fees over the past 18 months. He had also been charging the families for so-called special assessments to cover the cost of the utilities and road maintenance on my land. When all this info started coming to light, Mr. HOA tried to pressure me into accepting a settlement. He offered to pay me $200K for the land where the houses were built, claiming it was more than fair market value for so-called undeveloped rural property. My lawyer advised me to reject the offer, but Mr. HOA kept escalating his pressure tactics. He started showing up at my house uninvited, calling me at all hours, and even had other HOA board members contact me to try to convince me to be reasonable. The final straw was when he threatened to sue me for unjust enrichment, claiming that since the houses had improved my property value, I owed him compensation for the construction. He actually said, "You should be thanking us for developing your worthless land for free. Those houses are worth more than your entire property was before we improved it." That is when I decided to give him exactly what he was asking for. See, Mr. HOA had been arguing all along that he had legitimate rights to my property and that the families living in the houses were legal tenants with established residency. He kept insisting that I couldn't just kick people out of their homes and that any resolution had to respect the existing living arrangements. So I did exactly what he suggested. I respected the existing living arrangements by charging rent. My lawyer researched comparable rental rates in the area and determined that fair market rent for houses like the ones built on my property would be approximately $2,800 per month each, and since the families had been living there for an average of 18 months without paying me any rent, I calculated the back rent owed at approximately $50,000 and $400 per household, totaling just over $200K for all families combined. I sent official notices to all 4 families, informing them that as the legal property owner, I was now their landlord and they owed substantial back rent for their unauthorized occupation of my land. I gave them the option to either pay the back rent plus ongoing monthly rent of $2,800 per house or vacate the premises within 30 days. Mr. HOA was absolutely furious when he found out about this. He called me screaming that I couldn't suddenly start charging rent and that the families had legitimate purchase agreements that protected them from eviction. I calmly explained that he was absolutely right, they did have legitimate purchase agreements, but the problem was that their agreements were with someone who had no legal right to sell my property. Since he had insisted all along that these were valid living arrangements that I had to honor, I was simply honoring them under the correct legal framework as rental properties on my land. The beautiful part was that this put Mr. HOA in an impossible situation. If he continued to argue that the families had legitimate rights to live on my property, then he was acknowledging that I had the right to collect rent as their landlord. If he admitted that the sales were fraudulent, then he was confessing to federal fraud charges. He chose to double down, though, on his claims about legitimate property rights, which turned out to be a huge mistake. Within days of my rent notices going out, 3 of the 4 families contacted me directly. They were understandably upset about the situation, but they were even more angry at Mr. HOA for putting them in this position. One family actually thanked me for giving them a rental option instead of just demanding they leave immediately. 2 of the families decided to pay the rent and stay while they pursued legal action against Mr. HOA. One family chose to move out and also sued the HOA for fraud. The 4th family initially tried to fight the eviction, but their lawyer quickly advised them that they had no legal standing and to remain on my property without paying rent. But the real karma came when the criminal investigation reached its conclusion. They discovered that Mr. HOA and his brother-in-law had been running their scam across multiple counties, targeting at least 12 different property owners over the past 5 years, and the total amount of money involved was over $3.2 million. Mr. HOA was arrested and charged with federal mail fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering. His brother-in-law was charged with bribery, corruption, and conspiracy, and the HOA itself was also charged as a criminal enterprise under RICO statutes. During the investigation, they found out that Mr. HOA had been living way beyond his means, using money from the fraudulent land sales to buy luxury cars, take expensive vacations, and even purchase a vacation home in another state. He had also been skimming money from legitimate HOA dues to fund his lifestyle. The prosecution offered him a plea deal, 10 years in federal prison in exchange for cooperating with the investigation and helping them recover money for the victims. He rejected the deal though, apparently believing his high-priced lawyer could get him off with a slap on the wrist. This was a big mistake. The case went to trial last year and the evidence against him was overwhelming. The jury found him guilty on all counts after less than 4 hours of deliberation. The judge sentenced him to 9 years in federal prison and ordered him to pay millions in restitution to his victims. His brother-in-law took a plea deal and got 5 years plus permanent disbarment from any government job. The HOA itself was dissolved and its assets were liquidated to compensate the victims. As for me, the resolution worked out better than I could have hoped. The federal court ordered the HOA's remaining assets to pay for the removal of all 4 houses from my property, and I also received a substantial settlement from the HOA's insurance company. The 2 families who chose to stay as renters ended up being great tenants, and I eventually sold them the land where their houses were built at a fair price once their legal issues were resolved. They were thrilled to finally have legitimate ownership of their homes, and I made a nice profit on land that I wasn't actively using anyway. The other 2 families received full compensation from the restitution fund, plus additional damages from civil suits against Mr. HOA's personal assets. The most satisfying part was learning that Mr. HOA's fancy lawyer fees and legal costs had wiped out most of his personal wealth. The vacation home he bought with stolen money was seized and sold, his luxury cars were repossessed, and his primary residence was foreclosed on when he couldn't make payments from prison. The man who tried to steal my property and threatened to drag me through years of expensive litigation ended up losing everything. Meanwhile, I ended up with more money than I started with and got rid of a problem neighbor for good. The next one is a fantastic malicious compliance story, and it is titled, "Okay, I won't answer my old staff's questions and help them." Before I retired, I was a manager and programmer in a department located in the US. I would program, manage, assign projects, create timelines, and answer questions that my staff had. The company I worked for decided to consolidate the US and UK programming departments, and the new boss decided to have only managers in the UK oversee the programmers in the US. This meant that I was only supposed to keep programming. I had the most experience among all the US/UK programmers and no longer needed to do the management side of things, but I still got the same pay I used to. Due to a 6-hour time difference between the US and UK, that meant that there were only 2 or 3 hours each day that we overlapped. This left the rest of the day for my old staff to either wait until the next day to ask their new boss or come to me and I could answer immediately. The latter made more sense, so they could keep working, but eventually the UK managers complained to the US/UK boss that the US staff was not coming to them to help and were still coming to me, which the UK managers were having a conniption about. My boss told me to stop helping my old staff when they asked me questions and that they needed to ask their new manager. So it was time for malicious compliance. I went back to only programming, and when my old staff came and asked me questions, usually in the afternoons US time since the UK was done for the day, I told them I was told to no longer help them and they should ask their new UK manager the next day or send their UK boss an email with their question. I told them it was time for malicious compliance since the US programmers knew exactly what would happen. So my team started deluging their UK bosses with questions, problems, etc., and then had to wait until the next day or 2 to get answers. Within 2 weeks, the US team was missing deadlines, etc., and the UK managers had to answer for why their team was missing deadlines. After a couple more weeks, my boss and the UK managers came to the realization that due to the 6-hour time difference, there should be a manager in the US, which is exactly what I told them weeks ago. Finally, my boss asked me if I would like to be a manager again, and I told her I was happy just programming and didn't need the other work. They ended up giving me a raise in order to get me go back to managing the US programmers. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. And the next one is titled, "Am I the a-hole for telling my friend that I slept with his disabled younger sister?" And by the way, before we start, I noticed a massive percentage of my viewers have actually not subscribed to my channel, and I would love to change that. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing to my channel because it would mean a lot to me. So anyway, John and I are both in our 40s. He was my friend through middle school and most of high school. We hung out together, played the same sports, did church summer camp, etc. Basically, we grew up together. I also knew and spent time with his sister Mary. Mary has cerebral palsy and uses an electric wheelchair. After graduating, John went to university while I stayed back home to work at my father's business and go to community college part-time. Mary also went to community college and we ended up hanging out a lot. John and his family liked the idea of me being like a big brother to Mary. Mary and I grew closer and we began having sex. We were not exactly dating, but it was a lot of fun for both of us because Mary's family is very protective of her. We both agreed to keep our relationship a secret. Eventually though, her family found out and there was an ugly confrontation with me and them. They accused me of taking advantage of Mary because of my familiarity with her and because she was disabled. Mary insisted she wanted the relationship, but they dismissed her views like they always did. John was especially angry at me, even trying to start a fist fight. My father got involved and things eventually settled down, but my friendship with John and his family was over. I ended up leaving the area after I got my associate's degree and moved out of state to live with my mom. So 2 decades since then have passed. I've stayed in contact with Mary, but only exchanged basic pleasantries with John and his family. They are still connected with my father, so it's just a courtesy relationship. 2 weeks ago, Mary came to my city and we met for lunch. It was a company event with her co-workers and vendors, but I still enjoyed seeing her again after so many years. We continued the evening at her hotel room and I ended up spending the night with her. This Saturday morning, I woke up to find a message from John. We have barely communicated for the last 20 years, so I was startled to see his name. Apparently, he had gotten around to looking at the pictures Mary had posted from the lunch and saw me sitting next to his sister. It was like we had teleported back in time to 20 years ago. The same accusations and angry insults got flung at me. He dredged up crap I had forgotten about years ago. He ended his message warning me not to spend time with Mary. I was outraged by his message. We are 2 grown men, not high school kids. How can he say those things about me and his sister? In my anger, I messaged him back saying that not only did I spend time with Mary, but that we slept together again and he should get over himself. It felt good to retaliate like that, but I immediately had my doubts. When I talked with Mary, she was not upset, but she made it clear that she would have preferred I just ignore her brother, like she does. We are still keeping our plans to see each other again, but I realize Mary is disappointed by my childish behavior. So, Reddit, am I the a-hole for my reply to John? And yeah, Ripe Stars, let me know what you think about this in the comments. Is OP being the a-hole here or not? And I would say OP is definitely not the a-hole, but I would love to hear what you think about it. Anyway, update to the story. After reading the comments, I'm apparently not the a-hole for my relationship with Mary, but my response to John was unacceptable. That's fair, I've apologized to Mary and she has accepted my apology. That does not change the fact that I screwed up, of course, for sharing intimate details without first asking Mary. I am the a-hole. I will never do that again. As for the fallout of my a-hole moment, John sent another nasty message that got even more personal, including telling me some things about our past and my father that were very hurtful. Following the advice of the comments, I replied calmly and then blocked him. As I mentioned in my post, I'll be seeing Mary again. I'm spending this spring/summer back home with my father. After his wife passed last year, he decided to wind down his business and sell our old house. I'll be going back there for about 3 months to help him with the business, fix a few things at the house, help him pack and just hang out together. It is several decades of memories to be put away or donated, so we are taking our time. We'll barbecue and go to baseball games like we did when I was a kid. Mary and I are looking forward to seeing each other again this summer. Our weekend together was memorable despite my later stupidity. There's a fair chance that John will come and try to stir crap up, but I'm not stressing over it. Mary means a lot to me. It'll be good to have 3 months to enjoy each other's company before I have to leave again, this time for good though. Also, I'm sure that Mary and I will stay in touch, maybe even see each other again in the future. Thank you for the comments and messages. And the next one is a malicious compliance story. Have me work throughout the pandemic, promote me and then don't accommodate my disability? You can pay my short-term disability insurance for that. So let me give a little backstory first. I started working at Walmart before the pandemic happened as a full-time apparel employee. I happened to have epilepsy that started in my mid-20s around 2015. I'm also quite understanding of other people's disabilities and often try to work with them since I can relate to having issues. Example, I use hand gestures and/or writing for deaf co-workers. This helps with basic communication that most hearing people don't bother with, and it's normally appreciated that I do this. Anyway, I got to stay in that exact same position throughout 2020 and part of 2021. Naturally, I had to still go to work as an essential employee and deal with anti-masking idiots and worry about both my parents who also work in retail. I managed to get myself promoted to the digital shopping department by transferring stores and pointing out certain key skills I have that are really useful in retail in 2021. I had politely asked for the minimal requirements from my department manager of number 1, being able to take medication at work, and number 2, not having to bring orders out to cars because I lack what is known as an aura. Basically, summed up here, I cannot sense seizures coming, though I don't have them very often due to medication. A grand mal plus busy parking lot at work seems like a bad idea. My department manager agreed to this condition as long as I did other work to help out the digital team instead, which was completely reasonable to ask for in my opinion. So as per the request for a lot of closing shifts I would work, I would take up phone duty, pre-set up the orders to go out and / or do returns for the department. The issue here was the personal department person. She kept forgetting about my condition repeatedly over the next year. This was despite me bringing in medical notes from my neurologist for my file, pointing this out more than once on why I shouldn't be scheduled solo, and having the department manager talk to her. After over a year, she scheduled me completely solo for a closing, which I noticed and texted my department lead about. I did the official suggestion of hers despite my thoughts that corporate Walmart was likely even dumber than her on basic disabilities. I only asked for the exact same things I asked my department manager for, both very logical and minimal accommodation requests. As I suspected, Walmart's Sedgwick said, "We cannot do this unless you can change departments." All departments suggested either wouldn't work due to time and or location, or they were back at the same level as apparel, which would lower my position and even pay. Sedgwick put me on an automatically placed LOA after a few days without my permission. This was to allow me to figure out what I should do over the next 4 months. So I called up and asked the Walmart Benefits Center about this. As of late 2019, Walmart signed all of their employees up for a free to the employees short-term disability insurance without officially telling them. I filed to get this insurance to pay for my entire LOA, politely my situation to a total of 3 people, and was given the short-term disability payments with back pay for exactly when they put me on leave. I would rather have my paycheck and insurance stick around for a while despite Walmart and Sedgwick being idiotic. I quit Walmart after having gotten holiday employment with Target for 2 months at that point. And the next one is another malicious compliance story and is titled "Never Tell Me What to Do." So I am a disabled veteran, and at the time this actually happened, I was solely depending on a walking stick. I could not walk more than 10 feet maximum without any assistance. I was asked by a friend of mine to be a bridesmaid at her wedding. She quickly proved herself to be a bridezilla from hell, and everything had to meet her vision. Everything had to fall within her very rigid scope of what the aesthetics should be. She made a couple of what she claimed were innocent comments about my walking stick. I offered multiple times not to be a bridesmaid and would assist in any other way I could help, but she refused every offer and insisted I had to be a bridesmaid. Then I heard from another close friend and also a bridesmaid that she was very upset that I was insisting on using my walking stick. She made a comment saying that she was just gonna hide it and then I would just have to go without it. Looking at the mutual friend's face when she said that, she tried to laugh it off as a joke. Well, there was no doubt in my mind that she was going to try to have my walking stick go missing. So of course I made arrangements. Sure enough, they have the wedding rolls around and while getting hair and makeup, my walking stick disappears. I was not happy and told everyone that I have to have it back. I cannot walk down the aisle without it. The bride insisted that they didn't know where it was and they looked everywhere and I was just going to have to make do. I said so after you joked about taking my walking stick, it goes missing, and you want me to make do? Her exact words were, "You will just have to do what you can do to get up the aisle." Cue my malicious compliance. I texted my boyfriend that he went out to the car and brought in my mobility scooter that I had rented just in case I needed it. I had him put it out of sight but where we could get to it easily, and then he or the other bridesmaids physically supported me. We made our way to the back of the hall for the start of the ceremony. The bride, who had been talking to her father and not paying attention, did not see the scooter until she started to walk up the aisle, and there are her 3 bridesmaids. 2 standing tall and me sitting on the most hideous looking multicolored with sparkles mobility scooter I could find. If looks could kill, she would have planted me. Within seconds of the ceremony ending, my walking stick had been found. She and her new husband brought it over to me and told me it had been found and I could get that god-awful scooter back out to the car. I mustered up a tear and told her I was so sorry, but I was in so much pain from having to try to walk without my walking stick that there was no way I would be able to go without the scooter. I'm very proud to say that the scooter is in over 90% of her wedding photos. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I gotta say, that was a true bridezilla, and OP was 100% in the right here, and respect to OP for enacting this absolutely perfect malicious compliance. It could not have been done any better, honestly. And the next one is a brand new story from r/malicious compliance. This one is titled, Not Working Enough Pallets, So I Worked More Pallets. Retail. Simple, straight and forward. At an old job I was once called out for not doing enough work. I was not shifting enough pallets of stock, apparently. So I started working only on big easy pallets that would go out in seconds, such as bins, microwaves, etc. I worked a homewares department, which covers a lot of stuff from cookware right down to soap and makeup, and completely avoided the smaller stuff that takes forever. Of course, eventually the little stuff started piling up and eventually had a poor workflow because everyone was stuck doing nitty-gritty stuff in busy times. It turns out putting out hundreds of little items when you're busy is disproportionately harder than 10 big things. To add to it, I was congratulated for completely turning things around and working plenty. To which I said, I probably worked less hard and explained what I did. There was a certain level of indication upon seeing the reaction to it. It was not fully malicious, I admit, because I didn't want trouble for not working when I was one of the harder workers. It was pretty satisfying situation overall, though. And yeah, guys, thank you for watching. Please don't forget to check out my podcast for more stories, and I will see you again tomorrow.